what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Homa Comics. Today we're doing something a little bit different, but still be part of our main coverage on the channel. We're covering our first Star Wars project here. This is the Ninth Jedi, which is an animated anime series, actually produced by a Japanese studio in coordination with Lucasfilm. As far as I can tell, this is not really like fully like a Lucasfilm project. They obviously oversaw it, but it wasn't done by their typical in-house studios. Um, and it is actually a sequel to two Vision shorts. One was in the first season, titled The Ninth Jedi, and then one was in this last third season of Visions, titled The Ninth Jedi: Child of Hope. And it's an 8 episode series. I don't really want to call it a mini series. It's really quite long. I was actually a little bit shocked at how long this show really was. And I'm just going to kind of give my honest thoughts on it. It is not canon. We're going to be covering a few things that are not canon periodically. I still want to cover them. They're still Star Wars, and I think that they're still worth covering, but it's not canon to the main timeline. I'll say to start off, I think the animation is really good. You can look at a lot of scenes and you'll notice this 3D style when they're in space and a 2D style when they're kind of not in space. I think it's an interesting way of animating a project. I definitely think that it works very well for Ninth Jedi. The technicals of this show are really, really good. So, like, animation's one thing. I guess color is really good too. It's voice acted pretty well. I watched parts of it subbed. I watched parts of it dubbed. It's technically they're kind of like, watch it however you want. But they do have a Japanese voice cast and an English voice cast. I wanted to do it all in Japanese. What ended up happening was my TV with, like, I have ads on Disney Plus, so a little bit of a side tangent here. Essentially, what would happen sometimes is it sometimes cuts off the subtitles a little bit too early, and I would miss like the last like minute of captions because it would like just cut off the captions, keep the video playing, and then eventually hit the ads. So I was like, I need to watch this in English, so that way I can hear what's actually going on. I'm not fluent in Japanese, unfortunately. But the voice acting was still pretty good for the dub. Pretty typical dub stuff, but definitely like an above average dub. And I will also say that in terms of animation, the action is very well animated. It's also very good for like Star Wars action. It's very unique in a lot of its concepts. Particularly the final episode has a lot of insane lightsaber fights that obviously it'd be cooler like in live action, but considering its animation, considering its anime, I actually really appreciate what they've done with the action in this show. I'll say the story is solid. It's pretty easy to follow. There's a Jedi named Kara who's trying to find her father. There is this very evil, it's basically the Empire. It's kind of not the Empire. They don't call it the Empire, but it's essentially the Empire. And they're fighting against it to find her father. They find her father. Oh my god, father. But they learn that like he was sort of this like pseudo master to the evil guy. And you're gonna understand why I don't remember these guys' names in just a second. I have a criticism about that. But he is actually a gray Jedi. Or really just a gray force user. He doesn't really want to label himself a Jedi. And so he's trying to achieve the state of nothingness, and he believes that this will give him ultimate power. Kara ends up learning the same nothingness sort of angle, but really what it becomes is a way for her to control her emotions. So she's neither light-sided nor dark-sided, and then eventually she learns to fully embrace the light, and she defeats the bad guy. Now, here's my issue with why I don't remember people's names. The characters are super forgettable. So I remember Kara, I remember Ethan, and that's about it. So Ethan is just like I legit just remember that name because it's like a very like common American name. I'm typically very good with Star Wars names, but they take a while to ingrain in my head. One of my favorite Star Wars films is Rogue One, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I could not remember everyone in that movie's names. It's simply the way that like Star Wars just has these really strange names that aren't real life names, and so it takes you multiple watches or a lot of analyzing of a project for you to really remember people's names. And I'm sorry, I watched this one time through. I could have taken better notes, absolutely, but I also wanted to kind of point out that like you don't these characters are also not very remarkable. Ethan doesn't do anything interesting. Like he's just an extra Jedi. There's no characterization for these guys, and this is definitely points off for this show. I think Kara has a decent character arc, but I think aside from that, I think a lot of these characters are very lacking. I will say that death does happen in the show. It's a very big cast of characters. They do have a master named Margrave Juro. I do remember that guy, and he does get killed kind of early on in the season. But like it doesn't feel that crazy. He also becomes a Force Ghost later on, but it's typical Star Wars stuff. I feel like I don't know, the cast of characters is not particularly remarkable. Grey Jedi are not as bad as people claim. It was another point I brought up here. I do think that the concept is kind of cool. I know a lot of people really hate it, especially diehard Star Wars fans. It was a concept that was introduced in Legends. They've never introduced it into canon, as far as I know. This isn't canon, so this is not introducing the concept into canon. It's just introducing it into mainline Star Wars stuff, I guess. Like it's a new, it's part of this new regime's like content, and so yeah, it's technically back in the public eye, but it's not canon. So I do think it's an interesting concept, and they use it pretty well. Like, it's this idea of like nothingness, this state of nothingness. It's a different way of looking at Grey Jedi that I hadn't really thought of before. I will say that they do balance out this incredibly weak ensemble with good storytelling. Like again, like this story is pretty good. It's pretty easy to follow. It's pretty well developed. But I will say that it rehashes major aspects of the original trilogy, which I put a comment here. I said that was pretty fair to do as well. Star Wars likes to go back to the basics, whether or not you blame them or not. I love the story of the original trilogy. Doing a different spin on it, obviously, it is not the same thing as the original trilogy, but you'll see the homages. There's a couple homages to the prequels as well. The development team that made this grew up with both the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, so of course they're going to take a couple homages from there. It's actually a pretty decent homage to Episode 9 as well. I will say that the epic space battle that takes place over the last few episodes is very much reminiscent of Episode 9's epic space battle. Now, I don't like Episode 9's epic space battle, but I will say that in The Ninth Jedi, it's definitely not nearly as bad. I will say the evil people in the show do not seem that evil. Bad, yeah, they have like a laser cannon that will destroy planets, much like Episode 7 or Episode 4 with, the Death Star and Starkiller Base. But like, they're pretty typical bad guys. Like, the show tries to convince you that they're really, really, really evil, and I just don't buy it. Like, they're just normal evil. And I say that this show is a bit too long. It is. 8 episodes was kind of egregious. The show's split in half, so the first 4 is a plot arc, the last 4 are a plot arc. They're about half an hour each, give or take. I just feel like it probably could have been 6 episodes. There's a few episodes that aren't filler, but they could have been condensed. There's a lot of moments that the show really gives you to pause. And I would have loved this if I could remember the characters' names. I don't. Like, that's the issue. If you're going to do a show that has all these big character moments, you kind of need to, give the characters more time to develop. So either you go all in or you don't go all in. The show does it halfway, and so it's just like you might as well just not gone all in and just told a very condensed story. I am glad it's not canon. I don't think it's perfect, but I also think that like specific concepts, especially Grey Jedi, could eventually weave its way into canon. And the way they cover it is definitely a template for how I think I would want to see it covered in the canon. While I have no desire for a second season, which they sort of tease at the end, but honestly, you don't have to really buy it as a tease. I do think that this concept is good. Visions presents having different like Visions series could be a really good way of bridging the gap between canon content and just giving people something else to chew on. It's definitely interesting. I think the best adjective I can use to describe the show is interesting. I recommend you check it out. It is long, 8 episodes, half an hour each. 4 hours essentially of runtime, but I do think that it is good. I just not think it is great, and it's not necessarily in my top tier of Star Wars animation. There's definitely Visions episodes that are better, but those are 20 minutes long, so they're a lot easier to digest as well. That being said, I'm going to give this the lightest of 7s out of 10s. I do think that there's a world where you caught me on a good day. I think on a bad day, maybe I give it a 6, but I'll say a 7 here. It's certainly a good story. There's great animation, great voice acting, but I do feel like the cast of characters are very thin. You're not getting a lot out of this for the time that you're putting in. And just take that in mind. If you're a hardcore Star Wars fan like myself, though, absolutely, I would recommend it. That's all I have for you guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts on The Ninth Jedi, and I'll see you guys in what I assume will be the next Star Wars project that we're going to be covering on the channel, which is none other than Star Wars Zero Company. We're going to be doing a playthrough of that, much like we do with our Spider-Man streams, so please tune in there. For the next Star Wars Disney Plus show, Lego Star Wars The Mandalorian is probably the next thing we'll be covering, again, non-canon, very funny probably. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.